The air in the dimly lit alley behind the temporal drift was thick with tension, electric and unyielding. Kale's senses were heightened, every sound amplified, every shadow a potential threat. Elias checked his weapons, cybernetic arm whirring softly as it interfaced with his gear, while Kale scanned the horizon for signs of the approaching Syndicate strike force. "Kayla Varys isn't just a commander," Elias muttered, voice low. "She's a master tactician who bends time in combat, makes seconds stretch, compresses enemy movements. She's why the Syndicate's so deadly." Kale swallowed hard but nodded. The stakes had never been higher. The first shimmer appeared like a mirage, ripples in the fabric of reality as Syndicate operatives materialized, stepping through improvised temporal rifts. They moved with unnerving precision, weapons crackling with unstable Chronos energy, designed to disrupt neural synchronization. Kale and Elias dropped into combat positions, their plasma pistols flaring to life. "Remember," Elias warned, "time dilation can work both ways. Don't get caught in her loops." The fight erupted with a deafening roar. Bullets and energy blasts tore through the alley, but time itself warped, bending around the combatants. Kale felt seconds stretch infinitely as he dodged a sniper's shot, then collapse in a blur as he returned fire. Amidst the chaos, Kayla Varys emerged, a striking figure clad in adaptive armor that shimmered like liquid silver, eyes glowing with fierce intelligence and a cold resolve. She moved with grace and lethal efficiency, her every strike accompanied by temporal distortions that twisted the battlefield. Kale locked eyes with her, recognizing the deadly determination he'd seen mirrored in his own reflection. "You're meddling where you don't belong, Thorn." Kayla's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "The timeline belongs to those with the strength to control it." Kale gritted his teeth. "The timeline belongs to everyone, not just tyrants." The battle intensified, each strike fracturing moments into fragmented echoes. Kale realized he couldn't rely solely on firepower. He needed to outthink Kayla's temporal manipulation. He tapped into his own training, syncing his neural implants to the rhythmic pulses of the city's fluctuating time streams. By anticipating shifts and riding the currents of warped moments, he began to counter her moves, turning her time bends against her. With Elias covering his flank, Kale closed the distance, driving Kayla back step by step. Their clash was not just physical but temporal, a war of wills stretching across seconds and centuries in microcosm. Finally, with a calculated surge, Kale disabled her armor's chrono field generator, sending a shockwave that rippled through the time stream. Kayla fell back, eyes blazing with grudging respect. "This isn't over, Thorn." As her forces retreated through collapsing rifts, Kale and Elias breathed heavily, the alley falling silent but for the distant hum of temporal storms. "We just bought ourselves time," Elias said grimly, "but Vark won't wait." Kale nodded, steeling himself. The gambit had succeeded, for now, but the battle for the continuum was far from finished. Kayla fell back, eyes blazing with grudging respect. "This isn't over, Thorn." As her forces retreated through collapsing rifts, Kale and Elias breathed heavily, the alley falling silent but for the distant hum of temporal storms. "We just bought ourselves time," Elias said grimly, "but Vark won't wait." Kale nodded, steeling himself. The gambit had succeeded, for now, but the battle for the continuum was far from finished. Kale sifted through recent interactions, recalling moments and conversations that now seemed tinged with deceit. The weight of doubt settled on every word exchanged. They devised a trap, a false transmission planted to lure the mole into revealing themselves. Hours stretched as shadows lengthened, and time ticked relentlessly toward Vark's fatal strike. Then, The trap sprung. A figure moved stealthily within their sanctuary, hands deft and calculated. But Kale and Elias were ready. With a sudden flash, the intruder was cornered, a familiar face, Vela's closest confidant, the data analyst Rin Ale, eyes wide with panic and regret. "Why?" Kale demanded, voice sharp as the temporal knives they wielded. Rin's voice trembled. "Vark promised salvation for my family, a future beyond these fractured timelines. I had no choice." Kale's heart twisted, torn between fury and understanding. "Choices have consequences," Elias said coldly. "Now, you decide which side you stand on." As the sanctuary's doors sealed behind them, Kale knew that the battle was no longer just against Vark or the Syndicate. It was also against the shadows lurking within. The future hung by a thread, and betrayal had become the deadliest enemy of all. The cold wind howled through the jagged peaks surrounding the citadel of Kronos, a monolithic fortress carved into the heart of a temporal rift. Its walls shimmered with unstable energy, distorting light and time around it like a mirage, a living paradox, defying the laws of causality. Kale stood at the precipice, the pulsating archive core strapped securely to his chest, its faint hum a reminder of the immense power at stake. Behind him, Elias checked their equipment with methodical precision, cybernetic fingers interfacing with the temporal scanners, searching for any anomaly that could betray their presence. The moonlight fractured across their visors, casting fractured shadows that merged with the swirling rifts. "We have minutes, not hours," Elias warned. "The obsidian device cycles every 47 minutes. When it activates, the timeline collapses like a house of cards." Kale's jaw tightened. "No more mistakes." Together, they descended the cragged path, each step a deliberate move through a landscape where past, present, and future tangled like snarled threads. Time echoes whispered ghostly fragments, snatches of conversations, flickering images of moments yet to come, memories that might never be. At the outer gates, the air thickened with temporal energy. Wards pulsed with crackling blue light, programmed to erase intruders from the timeline itself. Kale raised his hand, releasing a concentrated burst from a modified temporal disruptor, momentarily disabling the shields. Inside, the citadel's labyrinthine corridors stretched endlessly, walls etched with glyphs representing moments of history, frozen yet alive, and shadows that moved against the grain of reality. Their mission was clear: reach the core chamber, disable the obsidian device, and stop Vark's apocalyptic plan. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, a cold, resonant tone that vibrated through their bones. "Welcome, Kale Thorn. I have been expecting you." From the shadows emerged Vark, his eyes gleaming with a madness born of power and desperation. Clad in armor fused with chronocrystals that shimmered like fractured stars, he exuded an aura of dominance over time itself. "You think you can undo what I have set in motion?" Vark sneered. "I am the future." Kale stepped forward, unwavering. "The future is not yours to command." A clash erupted, not just of weapons but of wills, as the citadel itself reacted to their battle, walls bending, floors folding into impossible geometries. Time fractured around them in dazzling waves of light and shadow. Elias joined Kale, their combined force pushing against Vark's temporal assault. Kale's mind raced, weaving through the unstable time streams, seeking the precise moment to strike. Then, with a synchronized burst, Kale targeted the obsidian device's core, destabilizing its temporal anchor. The fortress trembled as timelines began to realign, collapsing the chaotic rift. Vark roared in defiance, but the tide had turned. As the citadel's temporal shell began to implode, Kale and Elias raced toward an escape point, their bodies pulled through the unraveling folds of time. Outside, as the first light of a new dawn kissed the horizon, Kale looked back at the fading citadel, a symbol of shattered tyranny and reclaimed hope. The battle for time was won, but the echoes of its war would ripple forever. The first rays of dawn filtered through the shattered skyline of New Aegis, casting long, fractured shadows over the city that had just survived its most perilous hour. The air was thick with the scent of ionized metal and scorched circuitry, remnants of the temporal storm unleashed at the citadel's collapse. Streets once humming with the rhythm of countless timelines now felt eerily still, as if time itself was catching its breath. Kale stood atop the rubble-strewn terrace of the safe house, gaze fixed on the horizon, where the sky bled shades of violet and gold. His chest rose and fell steadily, the archive core still secure beneath his jacket, a beacon of hope and a reminder of the sacrifices made. Elias approached, his cybernetic limbs glinting faintly in the morning light, eyes scanning the distant skyline with a wary calm. "It's over. For now." Kale's voice was quiet but resolute. Vark's plan was stopped, but the scars remain. Time's fabric is fragile, and there are others who will try to tear it apart. A soft chime interrupted them, and Kale pulled out a small holopad. The screen flickered to life, displaying the weary but determined face of Vela. "Kale, Elias," she began, voice steady despite the exhaustion etched in her features. "The Syndicate's grip is weakening, but splinters remain. Our victory has sparked hope across fractured worlds, and with hope, rebellion." Kale's eyes hardened with renewed purpose. "Then we rebuild. Not just the timelines, but the trust, the alliances." Elias nodded. "The real battle begins now. Against chaos, against fear, and against the shadow of betrayal." As the city slowly stirred awake, Kale felt the weight of his journey settle into a new resolve. The continuum was safe, but the future was unwritten. He turned toward the rising sun, the light. The fractured flow of time whispered like 1,000 distant voices as Kale drifted through the chronovault, the hidden sanctum buried beneath the ruins of Old Halora, a forgotten city swallowed by paradox centuries ago. Here, time did not move in a straight line. Memories echoed before they were formed. Shadows crossed your path that belonged to your future self. It was the one place left where the truth of Vark's ultimate plan could be found. Kale adjusted the synchronization harness strapped across his chest, the archive core now interfacing with the vault's ethereal systems. Transparent conduits pulsed with blue light all around him, stretching like veins across a titanic chamber suspended in temporal mist. At the center stood the Oracle Gate, a massive crystalline structure of unknown origin that rotated gently in place, projecting scenes from multiple futures like a broken prism. Elias's voice buzzed through his earpiece. "You sure about this? Even glancing too long into the Oracle Gate can erase what makes you, you." Kale's eyes narrowed. "We stopped Vark's weapon, not his ideas. If there's any trace of where the Chrono Syndicate might resurface, it's buried in this machine." He stepped forward, boots clicking on the obsidian bridge leading to the Oracle Gate. Each step stirred whispers. His childhood voice, his mother's laugh, the scream he'd let out when he'd lost his unit during the fall of Viridian. The gate's inner ring expanded, sensing Kale's presence, pulling strands of his timeline forward like threads to be read. A vision burst to life. A sky split in two, one half burning with endless day, the other lost to perpetual night. Ships with emblems Cale didn't recognize, sleek, fast, and curved like blades, swarmed through orbital space around Earth. And there, in the heart of a storm, stood a familiar figure, Vark, but different, reborn, augmented by the very temporal storms he once tried to command, half machine, half wrath. His presence tore time around him like paper. Cale recoiled, eyes wide. He's not gone. He's become something else. The archive core on his chest began pulsing wildly, reacting to the vision. Sparks flared from its surface. Static buzzed through his comlink. Elias shouted, barely audible, "Cale, pull back! The core's resonating! It's syncing with the gate!" Too late. The oracle gate lashed out, time inverted. The chamber bled colors that didn't exist. Cale dropped to his knees as his consciousness split, pulled into 1,000 possible versions of himself. Some brave, some broken, some dead. And then, one vision anchored him. A woman, cloaked in white, standing beside an army of exiles. Her eyes met Cale's through the stream. She spoke a name. Lythira. Cale gasped, torn back to his body. The gate dimmed. Silence followed. Breathing hard, Cale stood slowly. The archive core was smoking. The interface burned out. But the name remained. Lythira. Not a place. A person. A key. "Elias," Cale rasped, throat dry. "I know what Vark's building toward, and I know who can stop it." There was a long pause on the other end. "Then it's not over," Elias said grimly. "Not even close." Cale turned from the oracle gate, eyes cold with purpose. "No. Now we begin the next chapter. Before the future dies screaming." The wind tore through the skeletal remains of the arc spires, once towering launch platforms that connected the world below to the floating cities of the upper stratosphere. Now, they stood as rusted monoliths against a sky bruised with atmospheric fractures. From this high vantage, the planet looked tired, like a creature wounded not by war, but by the constant rewriting of its own fate. Cale adjusted his thermal cloak as he approached the signal relay at the top of Spire 7. Every step crackled on frost-covered steel, every breath a cloud of resolve. He was alone now. Elias had remained behind to repair the archive core, and the others were still tracking Syndicate splinters in the outer colonies. But Cale had followed the name from the Oracle Gate. Lythira, a ghost in the continuum, erased from historical records, unknown to databases, even in the black vaults of Helix Command. And yet her name echoed in time, like a fault line waiting to crack. According to the fragmented coordinates embedded in the archive's final pulse, she'd last been seen near this very tower, nearly 30 years ago, except that, by all known physics, she shouldn't have existed at all. Cale activated the ancient relay console, his gauntlet fingers dancing over flickering controls. He sent a burst transmission, encrypted with the same subharmonic frequency that had pulsed through the Oracle Gate. For several long minutes, there was nothing, then static, then a whisper. "You are not supposed to be here." The voice was female, clear, calm. It sounded like it came from inside his skull. Cale didn't flinch. "Neither were you." A pause. "You carry the archive core." I felt its pain through the weave. Cale stepped back from the console, scanning the sky. No ships, no signs of movement. "Lythira," he said aloud. The gate showed me your face. The war isn't over. Vark has transcended death, she interrupted. I know. I saw his shadow ripple through the futures. Kale's heartbeat quickened. Then help me stop him. He's rewriting the fabric of choice, turning time into a weapon. Static buzzed louder, forming into a shimmering silhouette just beyond the edge of the platform. A woman, clad in flowing temporal mesh that danced like water, her eyes gleaming with knowledge far older than her face suggested. Lythira, but she wasn't quite solid. Her form flickered like a candle caught between dimensions. I was part of the Continuum Council, she said, stepping forward. We once believed time could be shaped like clay, molded, perfected. We were wrong. I left. I vanished. Because I saw what was coming. Kale studied her. Vark? She nodded. He was one of us. But where I saw fragility, he saw opportunity. When I refused to support his vision, he erased me, across all time. Kale's breath caught. Then how are you here? Lythira looked toward the fractured sky. Some things cannot be undone. Some names echo louder than oblivion. The silence between them stretched. Will you help me? Kale asked. He's coming back, stronger. We need to strike before he completes the paradox engine. She turned to him, face grave. I will help you, but not with weapons, with truth. A flash of light erupted around her, and a data shard materialized at Kale's feet, glowing, humming with compressed chronal memory. Take this, Lythira said. Within it is the Syndicate's origin, the forgotten crimes of the first chronomancers, and the secret Vark has buried beneath your very past. Kale knelt, lifting the shard. It pulsed against his palm like a heartbeat. When he looked up again, Lythira was gone, dissolved into the wind. Behind him, the relay console shut down. The tower went silent. Kale stood alone beneath the storm-painted sky, clutching a fragment of a forgotten war. Whatever came next, he would face it with eyes wide open. Because now he knew. Vark had not simply broken time. He had rewritten history itself. And the sky over Earth fractured like glass. Orbit above the planet burned with stormlight, shimmering distortions rippling outward in concentric rings as the paradox engine roared to life. From the far edge of the solar shield array, Kale watched the impossible unfold, moons flickering in and out of existence, continents reshaping mid-rotation, time bleeding from the core of reality like ink spilled on parchment. He gripped the side of the observation platform aboard the Aegis Reborn, Elias and Lythira beside him. Around them, final preparations echoed through the command deck. No more running, no more hiding. Everything now converged on one last, desperate gambit. This is where it fractures, Lythira whispered. The timeline is unraveling. If we don't reach the engine's heart before the breach event completes, Vark will become the prime anchor, a fixed point, immune to causality. He'll decide which version of history remains, and which of us never existed, Elias added grimly. Kale turned, eyes sharp. Then we do what we came here to do. He stepped onto the temporal spear, a sleek infiltration pod reverse-engineered from the Syndicate's own tech. Its hull shimmered with layered time-glass plating, one of Lythira's last gifts, designed to pierce the collapse field surrounding the engine's core. Coordinates locked, came Elias's voice through the comm. You've got one shot at this, Commander. Kale nodded. See you on the other side. With a low hum, the spear launched. It passed through the bleeding edge of reality like a bullet through water. Cale felt every version of himself scream. The heart of the engine he emerged in silence. The chamber was colossal, an impossible cathedral suspended in shifting temporal geometry. Stairs folded in on themselves, time ran up the walls like reversed waterfalls, and at its center, floating above a swirling singularity of cascading moments, was Vark, no longer entirely human. Where flesh had once been, now gleamed armor forged from entropy. His eyes glowed like twin suns, pupils dilated with centuries of stolen futures. Fragments of dead timelines orbited his body like debris, trophies from the lives he'd erased.
"I've been expecting you," he said. His voice carried echoes of Cale's father, his mentor, his own voice. "You're late, or early. It doesn't matter anymore." Cale stepped onto the swirling dais, grounding his mind against the nausea of the timeline flux. "You wanted to escape fate, but all you've done is become a slave to power you don't understand." "I understand it better than anyone," Vark replied. "History is a weapon. Reality is a lie told by the victors, and I choose to be its author." Cale activated the chronal shard Lithra had given him. It burst to life, releasing a storm of memory. Images swirled between them, the true origin of the Chrono Syndicate, the betrayals, the erased innocence, the manipulation of Cale's own past. "You murdered time," Cale said, voice low, "but truth remembers." The air ignited between them. Vark lunged first, his hand summoning a blade of condensed age, each swing dissolving moments from Cale's life. The day he joined the Command Corps, the first time he laughed after the war, the memory of his mother's face. Cale faltered, knees buckling under the weight of what was stolen. But then, Lithra's voice in his ear. "Anchor yourself." Cale roared, and from the core of his being he summoned not a weapon, but clarity. A raw timeline forged from choice, not control. His own memories returned, not as weaknesses, but as armor. Each loss, each love, each mistake. They formed around him like fire. They fought. Past against future, will against entropy. The chamber buckled as causality itself began to scream. Vark faltered under the weight of resistance. Cale was no longer one man, but the sum of every version of himself that had survived. And then, Cale drove the shard into the engine's control stream. Light exploded. Aftermath. Cale awoke on a hillside beneath an unfamiliar sun. Birdsong echoed through the trees. A breeze carried no memory of war. He sat up, disoriented. No scars, no battlesuit. Just peace. Then, footsteps. Lithra appeared, no longer flickering. Whole. Real. "You made the right choice," she said softly. "You didn't destroy the engine. You rewrote it. You gave time back its freedom." Cale looked to the sky, where stars pulsed gently in perfect harmony. "What happens now?" Lithra smiled. "Now, the future belongs to everyone." And somewhere, across the infinite branches of time, the last echo of Vark faded into silence.